There are things we're supposed to treat as wins, but when I look at them, I don't see wins. I see an example of how far we have to go. I'm supposed to treat this new Supreme Court thing as a win. You see, the Supreme Court, they're going to allow Trump to deport 300,000 Venezuelans. We have to go to a 9-person Supreme Court to get permission to deport all the barbarians the Democrats brought into the country. That's where we're at. And I'm supposed to cheer? No, I don't cheer. I think we're in a bad spot. Joining me now, Charles Cornish Dale. You probably know him as Raw Egg Nationalist. He has a great Substack, by the way, raweggsstack.com. Okay, Charles, I'm supposed to celebrate this. I mean, I guess I'm glad they're leaving, but that doesn't tell me we're in a very good place as a country.
No, I don't think that this is some great win. And in fact, actually, what we're seeing is we're just seeing the deepening of the kind of judicial takeover, really, of the executive branch. I mean, okay, yeah, it means that 300,000 people who shouldn't be in the US anyway can be deported. But actually, is Trump going to have to go to the Supreme Court every single time he wants to do anything, every single time he wants to exercise legitimate executive powers? And it looks like that at the moment, unfortunately. And look, I mean, we've had this supposed win, but not long before then we had the Supreme Court saying, no, actually, you can't do expedited deportation under the Alien Enemies Act. You have to give all of these people, all of these thousands and thousands of members of a foreign, basically a terrorist gang, you have to give them notice, you have to give them due process, you can't get rid of them. And so, I mean, yeah, Trump is still stuck in a very, very hard place, I think, and something's got to give. There has to be, I think, a new attitude towards the judiciary, a much harder line, because look, this is the tactic. It's the tactic that was used during the first, less radical Trump administration, and now it's being used again. Judicial warfare. They're bogging the Trump administration down in judicial proceedings and running out the clock, essentially. And there needs to be a new way of doing things.
No, I totally agree. I think we need to develop a much more hostile posture towards the judiciary. If they're going to decide we're not allowed to deport barbarians, then the judiciary simply becomes your enemy. That's all there is to it. And Charles, what hits me, and I know it hits a lot of my viewers because they email me all the time about it, is how consistent the game plan seems to be. It's not just America. It's happening in Canada. It's happened in the UK, Germany, France. The elites of all these countries have focused very clearly on bringing in as many foreigners as humanly possible, and they take control of the judiciary to try to protect said foreigners. It's consistent, and it's really evil.
Yes, it is. Yeah, this is a broader phenomenon. It's happening across the entire West. I mean, look, we've just had the Romanian presidential elections, right? The first round was cancelled by the judiciary, by the Romanian Supreme Court, when it decided that there'd been Russian influence over the election. There'd been a Russian intervention. The populist candidate, the pro-Trump candidate, who wanted to bring an end to the Ukraine war and perhaps to reduce reliance on NATO, etc., and restore national sovereignty. Well, it was decided that he was just a Russian toady, and so the election would have to happen again. And there seems to have been funny business again in this rerun of the election too, with a surprise win for the centrist, pro-NATO, pro-Ukraine war, anti-Trump candidate. So, I mean, it's taking place across the West, and they're playing for the highest stakes. This is about the future of the West. This is about the direction in which the West goes. Do things continue as they've been going on? Do we get more mass migration? Do we get kind of like closer, tighter, kind of globalist integration? Or do we see a return to national sovereignty as Trump is trying to do in the US? So I mean, yeah, this is about fundamentally, this is about the future of the West. And unfortunately, the kind of tactics that are being used against Trump and that are also being used throughout the European Union and the wider Western world are very effective. Because unfortunately, even hardline, let's say, hard right governments are loath to go against the judiciary. It's a big step
Mm.
to say, look, actually, you know what? I'm not gonna take any notice of the Supreme Court. I'm not gonna take any notice of judges. It looks like a coup. But of course, the truth is, it's the judiciary, it's the establishment, it's the elites who have actually carried out a coup.
No doubt. You have a great piece up on human events about the South Africans and the response from it. And actually, I think that pairs quite nicely with this piece from who is this, what's this nutty's name? Ellie Mistel went on TV. He said this.
Black people cannot save this country from white folks. We can't do it alone, right? If white folks aren't going to join in, if white women aren't going to join in, if Latinos aren't going to join in, we can't do it alone.
Charles, obviously, I'm perfectly aware there's a larger thing at play here with these elites. Usually it just comes down to power and money. But for a lot of these animals, it really just comes down to hatred of white people now. They've been so ingrained with this way of thinking that all white people are evil, inherently evil, that they just feel completely comfortable speaking like this now without any recourse whatsoever.
Yeah, they do, and that's in many ways actually. I think it's a gift. I do actually think it's a gift for the mask finally to come off, and that's exactly what's happened with this Afrikaner refugee program. So we all know that liberals hate white people, and that's liberals of any color. It's not just,
Mhm.
it's not black liberals, it's not Asian liberals, it's white liberals too. Liberals as a species, then their main target is white people. And, bottom of the heap for a liberal in their sort of moral universe, in their moral pyramid, is the white heterosexual male. We know that. We know that already. That's well established. But there's always been a certain amount of hedging, and they've always sort of tried to disguise the ultimate goal, which is basically to get rid of white people. But actually now with this Afrikaner refugee program, then the mask has come off and they're being quite open about the fact that actually, white people don't deserve moral consideration. White farmers are being slaughtered in South Africa. They're being raped and murdered. And the South African government now has passed a new expropriation law, like the law that was passed in Zimbabwe, to deprive South African farmers of their rightful property. Uh, it is tantamount to genocide if indeed it isn't a genocide. It's state-sponsored anti-white racism, which the Trump administration has called out. And so, quite rightly, the Trump administration has offered refuge to white South Africans. Well, 59 of them, 59, not even 60 white Africans, South Africans turned up in the US last week at Dulles Airport to avail themselves of this very generous offer from the Trump administration. And what happens? The liberal media, social media goes into absolute meltdown. Social media, TikTok especially, is full of videos of people saying, "We're going to hunt you down." Directed to these South African refugees. "We're going to hunt you down and we're going to make you go back to South Africa because you don't belong here. This is a lie. You don't deserve to be in the US. You have no moral claim to refugee status." And then you've got all of these commentators and talking heads too, saying, yeah, these people shouldn't be here. There isn't a genocide happening in South Africa. The South African government isn't anti-white. And in fact, one commentator, actually, I forget her name, she said, uh, these people shouldn't go back to South Africa. They should go back to their actual homeland, which is Germany. So I mean, it's confused. It doesn't make a huge amount of sense until you understand it simply as a hatred of white people, and that is what it is. It's hatred of white people. White people aren't deserving of moral consideration, and so you can let in an infinite number of third world migrants. Anybody who isn't white has a claim to come to America, but if you're white, no way, not in a million years.
Well, like you said, a mask-off moment that may have been beneficial in the end. Charles, that was outstanding. You can find his stuff at raweggstack.com. Highly recommend it. All right. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.